5 weapons that DICE should add to Battlefield 1. Now, having read far too many comments for my own good over the last couple of days, some of them on my own videos and some of them on other people's, it's clear there's a portion of the community out there that feel Battlefield 1 needs more variety in its weapons. People aren't loving the variant system, which technically replaces the true attachment system from previous games, and people would just like more stuff to play with. Additions come with their own balance complications, of course, but let's just remove all of that and simply see what weapons out there that could be added. Make sure you let me know some of your suggestions down in the comments today. They're probably very different to the 5 that I've chosen, but I've tried to choose weapons that I think are a little bit more obscure, a little bit different, and not just your average Joe. So let's get that conversation started. The first weapon on my list then is, well, rather unique, as most of the weapons are in this list, but it's the American Burton 1917 light machine rifle. That's right, light machine rifle. This weapon falls into a similar category as the Hellriegel does, where although it never saw any combat time during World War I, it was developed around the middle to the end of the war. Apparently, the need for this weapon's creation arose when pilots and their gunners didn't have a mounted weapon that was suited to taking down enemy observation balloons. The weapon was fitted with incendiary rounds, which when they pierced the surface of the balloon, they would ignite and cause the balloon to catch fire. The wacky design of the dual top-mounted magazines was the idea of its designer, Frank Burton, and allowed the gunners to fire one of the 2 magazines at any one time. Once the 20-round magazine was spent, no bullets left, the gunner could then pull back a lock catch on the empty magazine, disengaging it from the feeding position, push down on the other magazine on the other side of the weapon, lock that one in, and then fire another 20 rounds. This meant the gunner in the plane didn't have to go around looking for another magazine inside the hull, and he could maximize the damage for the period of time when the plane was flying in the right position. Despite being designed primarily as a mounted gun, Burton made sure to include attributes that would allow the weapon to be shoulder-fired as well. It had a bayonet lug fitting at the end of the barrel, a shoulder stock, and select fire capabilities as well. This essentially made the Burton 1917 America's first assault rifle. I reckon a weapon like this could easily fit into Battlefield 1. With it almost being an assault rifle, having something like this available to the assault class as a heavy alternative to the SMGs could be really interesting. The round the Burton fired, while being an incendiary, was also fairly large, and balancing that with the lower rate of fire might offer a bit more diversity within the assault class at the moment. It could also go to the support class and sit in there alongside the Masson and the BAR as some of the lighter options available in that class. With the unique dual magazine system though, and with the holder needing to switch magazines on some reloads and take out both and put new ones in at other times, this could be another really diverse weapon to add into the game. Weapon number 2 on my list is the Canadian Ross rifle. We already have a link to this rifle that's in the game currently, and that's the Hewitt automatic in the support class. The Hewitt is actually a conversion of the Ross rifle, being able to fire fully automatic as opposed to the bolt action of the Ross. The Hewitt never entered service during World War I, and the design was actually scrapped when the war ended. The Ross rifle, however, is a completely different kettle of fish. Produced from 1903 to 1918, the rifle was known particularly for its exceptional accuracy. In its inception, it used the same .303 round that the Lee Enfield rifles used, and that had great stopping power as well. The issue with the Ross, however, was its reliability. The length of the rifle, nearly 1.3 meters, made it extremely difficult to use in trench environments, often needing to be leant up against the slopes at the side. This caused the weapons to get dirty, filled with mud and dust, and that caused them to jam. By 1916, most of the rifles have been withdrawn from the front lines in Europe and replaced with Lee Enfields, which were by that time much more readily available, but it stayed part of the Canadian Expeditionary Force until the war ended, as its accuracy when operating in the right environment was almost unrivaled. If this kind of weapon was to make its way into Battlefield 1, I could see it as a competitor to the 1903 Springfield and the Gewehr 98, both of which offer high damage at long ranges. It used a 5-round stripper clip loading system through the receiver on top of the weapon. That keeps it in line with most other bolt actions in the Scout class as well, and what really might set it apart would be its extreme long-range accuracy, perhaps having a sweet spot even further out than the 1903 and the Gewehr 98. Weapon number 3, halfway through the list now, we have the Russian Fedora Avtomat. Now, we don't have much in the way of Russian weaponry in Battlefield 1 at the moment, but that is sure to change with the introduction of the Russian Empire in an upcoming DLC. One weapon that might have escaped your attention, though, is the Fedora Avtomat, another experimental assault rifle machine gun of the early 1900s. Its designer, Vladimir Fedorov, started work on an automatic rifle in 1906, but it wasn't until early 1917 that the product of his work actually saw use in combat, and that was in extremely limited numbers. Fedorov was said to have been impressed with the operations and use of the Chauchat machine gun, which is a French weapon, whilst he was sent to France as a military observer in 1915. He returned home soon after and adopted the approach of using a rifle design moving forwards, as opposed to using a machine gun as a base. He wanted to combine the power of a machine gun with the portability of a rifle. The weapon featured a select fire system, offering single, burst or fully automatic fire, and it came with a 25-round detachable curved box magazine. Does it look slightly reminiscent of the AK-47 that comes some 50 years later? I think it does a little bit. In early 1917, a small group of Russian soldiers was sent to the front line in Romania with the Fedora Avtomat. Only around 8 or so weapons with the group though, and their instruction was to report back on the performance of the weapon in a real-life scenario. This never actually occurred though, as the attack failed and many of the soldiers died in the assault. By 1920, only 100 of the weapons had ever been produced, so it would have been an extremely rare sight indeed. I think the Fedorov would fit nicely into Battlefield 1, perhaps in the medic class or the assault again. Having a burst fire medic rifle would give the class a bit more variety, with the 1907 and the Rigotti offering fully automatic or semi-automatic fire. If I were to hazard a guess though, I think DICE might already have this one in their sights for the Russian Empire DLC. Number 4 on the list is the French Berthier family. To give it its proper name would probably take quite a long time, as the Berthier is a full family of weapons, and it featured carbine alternatives as well. The original Berthier carbine was inducted into the French army in the early 1890s, and it was the design of Émile Berthier, who was an engineer on the Algerian railways, and his design would see use all the way up to the start of World War II. The Berthier rifle became the standard issue rifle of colonial French troops during World War I, with a perhaps more well-known Lebel rifle being specifically held for French infantry. According to reports, the original Berthier rifle was too long to be used in trench combat. If we were to see this family of weaponry come to Battlefield 1, perhaps the Berthier would come in the form of a carbine for the Scout class, much like the Lee Enfield does, focusing on those closer range targets. Either that, or we could see it become part of the cavalry class as an option to the Russian 1895, as the Berthier carbine at the time was the most commonly used rifle by cavalry units in the French army from 1890 onwards. And number 5 on my list, I think I've saved the best till last here, we have the American Annihilator 1 submachine gun. Now, I just had to include this. I just had to. I couldn't leave it out. Lots of you will associate this weapon, which is probably what you know as the Thompson submachine gun, with World War II and the Prohibition era, and rightly so. But did you know that its origins came from a time during World War I? I certainly didn't until I looked it up earlier today. Designer John Thompson in 1915 set out to work on building what he called an auto rifle that would replace standard bolt actions in use at the time. The design him and his team came up with used the American 45 ACP round. That's the same one that's in the M1911 handgun, and it was fed into the weapon via a stick or a drum magazine. During its conception and design stage, it was called the Annihilator 1, which was a reference to the trench broom effect that designer Thompson described the weapon as, for use on the Western Front in Europe. Now, by the end of 1918, Thompson and his team had worked out a design that was suitable and were just 2 days away from shipping units to the front lines in France when the war ended. After this, the weapon underwent more changes and improvements and became what we know today as the Thompson machine gun. Now, DICE haven't gone down the route of including all kit weapons in Battlefield 1. Instead, they've chosen to separate each class so they all have their own specific advantages and disadvantages. Something like this, though, the Annihilator 1, would be a perfect all-kit weapon, I think, levelling the playing field for all of the classes, but it might fall foul of simply being used over every other weapon that's available in that class. Now, DICE could balance that by only allowing stick magazines with 20 rounds apiece to keep the firepower down a little bit. Can I see this being added to Battlefield 1? Yes, 100%. We've got the United States of America in the game, so it kind of makes sense that a prototype weapon could enter it. I mean, we've got the Hellriegel, for example. That thing never saw action in World War I either, but yet it's in Battlefield 1. But placing it in the right class would be a difficult decision. So that's my 5 weapons. Let me know your thoughts down below with your opinions in the comments section. I might follow this video up with another episode highlighting some of the top suggestions that you guys put down there in the comments. It sounds like a good way to really get some of these community suggestions out there, and maybe DICE might see it. Make sure you hit a like on today's video as well. Let me know you enjoyed it, and I'll be sure to make more videos like this one as we move forwards. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.